in balancing independence with accountability. The fruits of this reform are already evident. We have witnessed 2 intakes under this system. The first, in the appellate division, where appointments were made on clear and fair principles. And the second, only a few days ago, in the High Court division, where new judges were sworn in under the same transparent standard. These appointments have restored public confidence in the impartiality of judicial selection and assured our younger generation that merit will be recognized and integrity rewarded. Ladies and gentlemen, independence, however, demands not only fairness in appointment, but discipline in conduct. In this respect, the restoration of the Supreme Judicial Council upon the disposal of the 16th Amendment review case has been pivotal. The Council has resumed its constitutional functions for many months now, as you're well aware, and with resolve has already taken up matters of judicial discipline. In recent months, it has investigated, examined, and when necessary, acted against misconduct. This demonstrates to the people that independence does not mean immunity, and that the judiciary will hold itself accountable to the highest standards of propriety. Dear guests, building upon these constitutional reforms, we have also taken up administrative measures to secure clarity and order. I want to cite 2 recent examples in this regard, which directly impact upon the judicial service holders. The first is আইন ও বিচার বিভাগের পদায়ন বিধিমালা 2025. For years, decades, deputations risked blurring the line between judiciary and the executive, casting shadows over judicial independence and status. The Ain o Bichar Vibhage Padayan Vidhimala 2025 has now established firmly a principled, time-bound, and transparent process of posting, ensuring that such postings are regulated and subject to due entrenched safeguards. The second, which I think is very significant in terms of institutional autonomy, is the Judicial Service Gothon Vidhimala 2025. And this Vidhimala has, for the first time in our history, given the authority of creation of the post of the judges to the Supreme Court. And codified the structure of judicial service. Recruitment, training, promotion, All are now defined by the law rather than being dictated by abstract discretion. This goes a long way, ladies and gentlemen, in strengthening morale in the service, guarantees fairness, and protects our judicial officers from arbitrary treatment. Taken together, these two sets of rules, or Vidimalas of 2025, mark a decisive advancement in the institutional development of the judiciary, bringing it a notch closer to true institutional autonomy. Ladies and gentlemen, reform, however, is not confined to statutes and ordinances. It is a living process that must be carried to the people. That is why I have taken my reform roadmap on the road. From Chattogram to Rajshahi, from Sylhet to Khulna, from Rangpur to Mymensingh, and I also include my initial visits to Faridpur and Borishal. We have engaged in reform roadshows where bench and bar, together with citizens, have engaged in open dialogue. I just divert here from my prepared text. As recent as about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Supreme Court here in Dhaka has initiated a process of engaging with university students. We have in-house technical expertise of world-class expertise, and we wanted to showcase that to the student community. The first such meeting was held only a few weeks ago, and all the invitees were from various public universities spread all over the country. Given the huge success of that endeavor, we are of intent, we have always been of intent, to repeat that process and that engagement with the registry, especially the younger, more techno-savvy members of the Supreme Court registry, now with students drawn from private universities all over Bangladesh, and that will take place in a few weeks' time. As I was making my point, going back to my text, in each division, town, and jurisdiction that I visited over the last 8-9 months, the district bars stood as partners, helping us measure pendency, debate procedural bottlenecks, and craft solutions rooted in local realities. These dialogues have reminded us that reform cannot be written from the capital city alone. It must be practiced across the nation. Among the reforms that I have placed before the nation of the last many months, one of the most discussed in these gatherings is the progress toward dedicated commercial courts. In a global economy, justice in commerce is as vital as justice in liberty. We have heard the frustrations of businessmen all across the country, entrepreneurs, and investors who suffer from delays. To meet this challenge, we are proposing specialized courts with trained judges, digital filing, and expedited procedure. Thank you. Draft framework is in hand. And very early on into my assumption of office in 2024, the draft was prepared by our in-house expertise at the Supreme Court Registry. In fact, many of the proposals that were later taken up by particularly the Judicial Reform Commission, we had a head start. As early as in October and November, we sent into the government proposals, a draft ordinance for setting up the Secretariat, complete with an organogram and a concept note. Various sets of vidimalas and rules, some of which have already been implemented, that would inure to the benefit of the judicial service. And this is an experience that the Supreme Court has embarked upon, a process where for the very first time in its institutional history. So we've been thinking out of the box for the last 1 year. And I hope that this process, that initiative, will be a sustainable one, not only in the weeks and the months, but in the years and decades ahead, because this is going to be a long, long journey. So draft framework, as far as setting up commercial courts, is in hand, and preps are being readied, and stakeholder consultation has already begun. I've just come back from Sylhet, where I took this agenda, and we had various chambers of commerce attending, huge representation from members of, and in fact, the Supreme Court Bar Association, the UNDP, the European Union, and the rest. And this was preceded by, only a few weeks earlier, by another very, very important dialogue, jointly organized by the Supreme Court in cooperation with BIDA and the UNDP, right? The UNDP, yes. So we are having these negotiations and creating these strategic partnerships on a continuous basis. And as far as commercial courts are concerned, I know the first week of September, the Dhaka Chamber of Commerce and Industries is also engaging in a dialogue with the Supreme Court. Will have a pivotal role to play. In fact, whenever the draft law is discussed, it is the law, well, draft ordinance, a template ordinance, which is the one that has been drafted by the Supreme Court itself. The commercial courts, if constructed, will help Bangladesh compete regionally, attract investment, and build confidence that contracts made in our land will be enforced swiftly and fairly. And of course, this legislation has a huge ADR component as well. None of this would have been possible, ladies and gentlemen, without the collaboration of the bar. Across the districts, the bar associations have worked with us, proving that reform is not the task of judges alone. And here in Dhaka, the Supreme Court Bar Association has been our closest ally. The SCBA has stood hand in hand with the bench, not merely as advocates before us, but as partners beside us, supporting consultations, embracing discipline, and shouldering responsibility for the credibility of justice. The Bar Council, too, under the stewardship of the Attorney General and the Vice Chairman, has shown national leadership. And I thank you again for your active participation in the National Convention that we held on the 22nd of June. both the Vice Chairman and the President of the Bar. Thank you so much. You made very, very robust statements that went a long way in carrying our message for reform and autonomy to the nation. Thank you very much. In fact, your vision has aligned the profession with the judiciary's reform, ensuring that bench and bar stand in harmony as twin guardians of justice. The uprising of July 2024, ladies and gentlemen, placed a mirror before us. The roadmap of September 2024 was my individual answer. The reform proposals sent to the government, the creation of the Judicial Appointment Council, the restoration of the Supreme Judicial Council, the adoption of 2 sets of rules in addition to other rules that have already been formulated, and various other privileges ensured to members of the judicial service. The reform roadshows across the country, the preparation and establishment, hopefully, of commercial courts, are all proof that we have chosen reform in deed and not simply in word. Today, I can say with conviction that nearly 80% of this mission has already been accomplished, and the remaining steps are within our determined reach. To conclude, let us then continue with this covenant with courage. Ladies and gentlemen, we have to complete the process of an institution's complete autonomy. We have to deepen transparency in appointments, sustain discipline in conduct, and extend reform to every court of the nation. I must assure our people that the judiciary of Bangladesh is trying hard, very hard, against all odds and situations and circumstances not necessarily of its own making on a daily basis. The judiciary of Bangladesh is trying hard to reclaim its independence, its discipline, and its purpose, and might I add, its relevance. And with that independence, we pledge to serve with fairness, with courage, and with the integrity the people deserve, and their sacrifices of the past, and most recently, the July uprising of 2024 deserve. Thank you very much.
ধন্যবাদ মাননীয় প্রধান বিচারপতি।